Good evening, everyone. I'd like to officially call this special called meeting to order. Welcome our candidates, commissioners, and members of the public joining us tonight. Before we dive into the interviews, I'd like to set the stage for how this evening will proceed. We have 90 minutes scheduled for tonight's conversation. Please note that no decision will be made tonight. The board will vote and make an appointment at our action session on Thursday, June 25th. Regarding the selection process, an appointment will be made on the affirmative vote of 4 commissioners. Once selected, the appointee will be sworn in and seated next month. To our candidates, we want this to be a natural and open conversation. While we aren't going to use our formal timer tonight, we will be mindful of the clock. Following your opening statement, the board will proceed with specific questions. Each commissioner will ask a question and then state which candidate they would like to hear from first. To maintain a consistent and balanced process, both candidates will respond to each question. With that in mind, we ask that you please try to limit your answers to 3 minutes or less. We truly value your ability to be concise, as brevity is greatly appreciated and helps us to stay on schedule. We're looking forward to your insights. Finally, for the members of the public in attendance, we will open the floor for public comment at the conclusion of the interview portion. We value your input and ask that you please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less so that everyone has a chance to be heard. I'd like to just add personally that I just respect anyone who is interested in public service at this level. It's a lot of work. People don't always understand what you're doing. And I want you to both know that just stepping up is a big deal. And I hope that we can continue some positive public discourse as we move forward. We have 1 seat and we have 2 people. We do have to vote. However, we appreciate both of you serving and supporting and standing up for kids in all the ways that you do. Before getting into specific questions, in 3 minutes or less, could each of you explain why you're seeking appointment to the board? We'll start with Mr. Goldman. Ms. Cornett will follow with the same question. Please explain why you are seeking appointment to the IPS board.
Just a clarification, is this the opening statement?
This is your opening statement.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Distinguished members of the IPS board, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. Check 1. Hey. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself and share why I'm seeking appointment for the District 4 vacancy. Growing up in a small town in southeastern Indiana, I loved school. Teachers challenged me, encouraged me, and helped shape my future. Their impact inspired me to pursue a career in education and public service. My path was not a straight line. I left college after 3 semesters to pursue a career in music, before returning to earn my degree from IUPUI and later a master's degree in international relations. That experience taught me that success is not always linear. And it's a lesson I often share with students today. For more than a decade, I've worked in education, first in higher education, and since 2020 in K-12 public schools as a teacher and a student support professional and a community engagement leader. Throughout that time, I've worked directly with students and families facing significant challenges outside of the classroom. One student I worked with was experiencing domestic violence and housing instability. By connecting her with community resources and helping her navigate school during an incredibly difficult period, she was able to stay enrolled, graduate, and build a brighter future. Stories like hers remind me that education is about more than academics. We must take a whole child approach, providing support while maintaining high expectations and rigorous instruction. As someone who works every day in public education, I believe all students deserve access to safe, high-quality schools and opportunities that prepare them for success. If appointed, my priorities would be improving student learning outcomes, strengthening enrollment, supporting the district's fiscal health, and ensuring IPS remains a destination for families. I also believe this moment presents an opportunity to strengthen collaboration across the public education landscape. IPS, innovation schools, and public charter schools face many of the same challenges and share the same goal: helping students succeed. We are stronger when we work together on behalf of children. Finally, IPS faces real financial and enrollment challenges. As a board member, I would focus on responsible stewardship of resources, using data to drive next steps and decisions, and helping IPS tell its story more effectively to families. Every student who chooses IPS represents both an opportunity and an investment in the future of our city. I hope I've shared both my passion for public education and the perspective I would bring in this role. If appointed, I look forward to listening, learning, and working collaboratively with my fellow commissioners to support important work happening across IPS. Thank you for your consideration and service.
Good evening. Good evening, commissioners and IPS community behind me. My name is Lindsay Cornett. I have been a resident of District 4 since moving to Indianapolis in 2019. I am also a former public school teacher, and perhaps most importantly to our conversation tonight, I am also a parent. I'm a mom to Ian, Leo, and Ruthie, 3 students who attend traditional IPS public schools. Our oldest will be a 7th grader at Harshman Middle School in Commissioner Thomas's district, and my other 2 students attend William McKinley School 39, which, as you know, is a District 4 school. District 4 is not only my home, it is also where I've chosen to educate my kids through their most formative elementary school years. I myself am also a product of public education, and due in part to the amazing experience I had in my own public school career, I went on to pursue a degree in elementary education. I taught briefly in Florida public schools before transitioning to work for churches and other community-based nonprofits, and many years as well as a stay-at-home parent. I love public schools. Even when I stepped out of the classroom, my attention to public education in our country and my dedication to supporting public schools however I could has never wavered. When our family moved to Indianapolis in 2019, we enrolled our oldest son in 1st grade at the time at William McKinley, and from day one, it was a phenomenal experience, and I became a fierce advocate for IPS. It's for this reason that I am seeking this appointment to the District 4 vacancy. We believe that IPS has so much good to offer our city, including the residents of District 4. I'm seeking this appointment because I believe that the parents and families and residents of District 4 deserve a voice on our school board. It's also extremely important to me in this next season of really significant change and transition for IPS to offer stability, representation, and camaraderie with the residents of our district, my neighbors. I am determined to do my part to get the tax referendum passed in November, and I view this appointment as a really unique opportunity. If we wait, obviously, till the November election, we are too late at that point. The stability of the schools that our family holds dear is at stake, and so I'm seeking this appointment so that I can join you in the work of strengthening IPS's trust in our community and strengthening the representation of District 4 residents. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation tonight.
Thank you both for your statements. So I have the first question, and since Mr. Boltman was able to go first last time, Lindsay, Ms. Cornett, I'll ask you this question first and then please follow. Considering that this appointment will fill a board vacancy until the next scheduled school board election, do you plan to, or would you consider running for an election in 2026? Why or why not?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. I do plan to run for this position in the November election. I'll begin by saying just how vital and important I believe these races are. I believe that school boards should be democratically elected. I believe it's good for our democracy and good for our school system when voters have a choice in who represents them. I did file my candidacy on June 18th, and I ran into obstacles at the election board, which you all have received documentation of. I am planning to file an appeal, and given the circumstances, I expect that appeal to be awarded and granted. But even in the event that that does not happen, I plan to run as a write-in candidate because I'm committed to serving District 4 families come hell or high water one way or another. I think this is, as I said, a really vital time of transition, and I believe District 4 is full of amazing schools that deserve a strong voice on the school board. That being said, as I alluded to earlier, I do really view the appointment as a really unique opportunity because we have this time-sensitive matter of getting the referendum passed to help ensure the long-term stability of the district. And so I'm eager to fill this appointment as well. I'm not viewing it as a stepping stone to November necessarily. So both the appointment and the elected position are important to me.
The answer is absolutely yes. It's really important for me to step up and lead. I have a lot of expertise that I think will help IPS navigate, like Lindsay alluded to, a time of transition and of challenge, but also of massive opportunity. And I believe a brighter horizon. It's already very bright, but there's light on the end of these transitions and challenges. I think I bring a unique skill set just with my experience in public education at this current moment. And I think that will position me well to help with that. So absolutely yes. And I definitely think that a democratic process is important in school boards. I have filed. I'm excited to learn, and I view that if selected, this moment would really help me get the requisite skills and knowledge of institutional knowledge needed to move forward in November in a very productive way. So I really treasure this time and hope that you all consider me for the appointment at this time.
So, Chris, this question is good. We're going to start with you again. What would you identify as the greatest opportunities and most significant challenges facing the district at this time?
One is both, and I'll explain. So currently in IPS, roughly 6 out of 10 kids who live in the IPS boundary do not attend an IPS school. So that's a challenge, right? But it's of course an opportunity. We can extend marketing to them, invite them back if they've left, introduce ourselves to new families, and tell their story in a compelling way. Because really, families are consumers. They're looking for a great opportunity for their most treasured children, and they want a great choice. And IPS has great choices. We just need to tell that story in perhaps a more compelling fashion. I really like the Choose IPS marketing campaign because there's lots of great choices within the IPS portfolio, but also recognizing that it's an important part of school choice landscape here in Indianapolis. So that's an opportunity and a challenge. Of course, as Ms. Cornett, referenced, the referendum is going to be a massive challenge, right? So, of course, we were all hoping for something more in the 40s and, of course, 50s on that rate. 37.2 is a challenge. So, but we'll navigate it together. And IPS is very resilient. If you think that's 170-year history, I mean, just think of the challenges overcome. This is just one more. Very doable.
First of all, I think that one of IPS's greatest opportunities lies in the diversity and the engagement of our community and our city. Because IPS residents love Indianapolis. And they love nothing more than to rally around something that they feel passionate about. And I imagine if we could channel some of that energy around IPS, a lot could be accomplished. People have a lot of passion about their individual schools. I'm certainly no exception to that, but I think that that can be expanded. I would love to see our city really come to understand the amazing resource and gift that we have in the IPS school system. I also think another opportunity really lies in our reading scores. There's always conversation, right, about reading scores. I read especially among third graders. And recently IPS showed, I believe it was a 10% score jump on reading scores. That is enormous. That is a huge jump. And I don't think that that information is getting out to our community effectively. As Chris said, we've got to do a better job of telling this story in our city. Just as IPS's graduation rate has started to outpace the state average, if we could see that same kind of growth in reading scores, I think that that would go a really long way to encouraging more Indianapolis residents to choose IPS. And then I will agree with Chris that I think the biggest challenge is the financial one. It's a complex issue, and its causes are complex. A lot of it lies in history, right? It's not just about someone overspending in a particular budget category. It's about a history of segregation and disinvestment in the urban core of our city. It's about Unigov and the long-term effects of our tax structures, right? It's a complex problem. And at the same time, when ILEA made their recommendations to the state, they did so without providing much information or data about how these changes would actually save money, though that was their mandate from the state. And so I think both a challenge and an opportunity, as Commissioner Thomas alluded to at Monday's meeting, will be holding IPEC accountable to delivering on what they've promised. It will be a challenge. But again, I'm committed to uniting our community around the referendum and around IPS's long-term success. If complicated realities are what is required, but I feel equipped and ready to do the work, and I hope I'll have the opportunity to do so.
So I will take the next question. You guys have both kind of alluded to the answer to this, so please highlight anything you want us to know. What qualifications and expertise do you possess that you feel would be most beneficial to your role as a school board member, and the why? And Lindsay, you can start.
Okay. I'm thinking about my qualifications in a few different buckets. The first one, of course, is education. As I said earlier in my opening statement, I have a bachelor's degree in elementary education K-6 from the University of Florida. It included a specialization in reading education and an endorsement in English for speakers of other languages. My children at School 39 in the past couple of years have started using a reading program called UFly, and I helped beta test that program during my undergraduate work as one of my internships that I did, which was pretty fun to see that come down the pipe. My experience was in Orange County Public Schools in Florida, which is very different from IPS in some ways, but it is one of the nation's largest school districts. It is an urban school district. The students in my classroom were incredibly diverse, socioeconomically, with a variety of special needs. They spoke several different languages at home: Spanish, Arabic, Albanian. One of my students spoke Albanian. I navigated lesson plans and curriculum, navigated standardized testing and IEPs and all of this. I have some firsthand experience with what our teachers are navigating every day. And I think that helps me to have empathy for their work. And I also think it gives me a valuable perspective on what makes for quality education and how we can support student education outcomes. And the other bucket that I'm thinking about is communication. So after leaving the classroom, I spent many years, actively still, as a writer and an editor for churches and for nonprofits. So I do a lot of writing for outward-facing communication that goes to donors, alumni, and other people who are engaged with the work that these nonprofits do. So when it comes to communicating complex topics in a way that is engaging and accessible to a diverse audience, that is something that I can do well and that I believe would be an asset to the board in this next season. By means of an example, in 2023, I was approached by the IPS communications department and asked to contribute some thoughts and some of our family's story to an op-ed. And in the end, instead, they asked me to just write the op-ed, and it ran in the, I believe, May 2023 issue of Indy's Child magazine. I linked to it in some of my application materials, I think. So that's just an example. I love talking to people about the things that I'm passionate about, and that, of course, includes public schools. And then the last thing is my experience as a parent, right? Day in and day out, I am navigating these choices about what school environment is best for our children, how are our schools contributing to the thriving of my neighborhood. I'm in conversations every single week with other parents who are trying to navigate these decisions. At School 39, I was able to start a parent organization because we didn't have one post-COVID. And so these are conversations that I'm having all the time. And from showing up to hearings to IPEC meetings and rebuilding stronger conversations, I've remained engaged as much as I could.
Thank you. So expertise, personal characteristics, active listening, empathy, and perseverance. As I alluded to earlier, I kind of had a nonlinear way of getting to where I am. And I really understand some of the struggles folks are going through just through my work with at-risk populations and helping them navigate certain things that come up in life is really important to me. So I definitely don't have the academic acumen of Ms. Cornett. I've got a master's degree, but I haven't published myself, etc. But as a school culture team member, for example, you show up to a radio call and you really try to figure out what's going on, because behavior is a form of communication, right? So you're trying to listen to our hardworking teachers, you're trying to parse out what's going on with the student, and you're trying to move forward in a way that represents them both well and meets them both in an equitable way, and try to do interventions that make sense for the child. So I would say, like, boots on the ground experience, especially with culture. I share this with one of the board members, but a really robust experience with admissions. So the marketing piece, the getting buy-in from families, the helping students find a good fit for them, and really reaching out to prospective families, telling that story in a compelling way, and getting them bought in. That's something that I have expertise in. And then the other components is really just doing the work every day. Like, I'm in Enroll Indy every day. I'm in the Power School every day. So I'm actively doing this work. We're following up with families, so we're making sure everything is good. Just doing events not every day, but often. So those are things that I bring to the table and really focusing on getting families engaged, heard, and part of the school system. Also showing up in the community. So I'm at events all the time, doing the work in my day job with a public school. And it's important to get out there. And I think that when IPS does get out in the community, great things happen. As Ms. Cornett alluded to, those stories are really resonating with important members. For example, at IPEC just this week, the Indy Chamber was there. So I too am disappointed in the referendum, but thinking about how do you engage folks that might not, that are a little, the referendum is a great case study because there's legitimate concerns about affordability, right? But there's also legitimate concerns about having what we need in the classroom and at our schools. So the more we can tell stories, the more we can bring people over and just share that message.
Thank you. Mr. Holden, we'll start with you for this next question.
Thank you, Dr. Kay.
thinking about the relationship between the superintendent and the board, how would you explain the difference between governance and management? And what does effective governance look like to you in practice?
So, governance, there's a simple way to illustrate it. It's nose in, fingers out. We look at what's going on in the school, right? We're governing, but we're not calling out teachers. We're not managing, right? So there's an appropriate distance that you need to keep as a board member, as someone doing governance, and you really got to trust the people that are in the driver's seat. Dr. Johnson is incredible talent, right? She runs her ship really well. She's got incredible administrators. She's got incredible teachers. Trusting them, those who are closest to the work, is really important. Now, from a governance perspective, that's not saying that we're not looking at it. We're looking at data, we're driving next steps after looking at data. That's really important. But having the correct professional distance is really important. And understanding the chain of command and how you would relay a message of, hey, we might need to tune that up a little bit, or that's an area of opportunity. Really respecting those closest to the work. And effective governance in practice, people on the board know where the data is. They have literacy with what the data means. Hopefully there's some boots on the ground going into schools, classrooms, of course, with the proper professional distance, understanding what that reality is like, and really having the strategic vision and what's necessary for the moment in mind. So currently, the what is needed at the governance level is really focusing on the fiscal health, focusing on strong enrollment, and moving IPS into its next chapter. Thank you.
I think the simplest way, sort of to frame it is division of labor, right? I think of governance in terms of big picture, long-term strategic decisions, whereas management is more the day-to-day operations, right? I think that both are obviously necessary, right? And it requires collaboration between both of them. You can't have successful governance without the management and vice versa. And on the other side of that coin, right, is that you can't also have either side reaching too far into the other's responsibilities, that then no one is able to do their job well. I love the nose in, fingers out metaphor. I think that's really great. So in practice, I think effective governance means always keeping the long-term vision and strategy in mind. For IPS, much of that has to do with student outcomes, right? And certainly, as we've alluded to a lot, the long-term financial stability. So we might, in practice, consider how a particular budget cut affects the long-term strategy, right? We might look at this cut and say, it's not just that it's the most expedient in the moment, but how does it impact student outcomes? How does it impact our long-term strategy? So both cooperation and also trust. We have to, just as I hope that Superintendent Johnson would trust the board has to have trust in the operations department's ability to manage things as well. I am curious to know how this balance between governance and management will shake out given IPEC. Obviously, you all are in those conversations more than I do, and so you might have a better sense at this point of what IPEC's governance responsibilities and authority will be. So I imagine that there's questions, me from the outside looking in, I have questions about how that moves forward. But certainly, agree that division of labor is necessary, but also a spirit of trust and collaboration between the two entities is really important.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. I have a pretty simple question. Board service involves a significant time investment. Will you be able to meet the requirement of attending at least 3 meetings a month? At least, just
Important. Yeah. The short answer is yes. Longer answer, I think if you talk to any of the people that I have worked with, they will tell you that consistency, reliability are things that I bring to the table. Those are values that I hold. Super practically, I have a really great support system around me between my husband, my sisters, and my parents who live nearby, and friends as well. When I first began floating the idea of pursuing a seat on the school board, unanimously the response was, "We got you, we're in your corner, we will help with whatever you need." And so I feel confident that I have what I need to offer the time and energy required to the board. My husband and I have a phrase that we have used from time to time, which is that cornets show up. So we try to make it a family value that when we commit to something, we are there. So when it comes to the 3 meetings a month, and I imagine the significant amount of time it takes to prepare for those meetings, I am willing and able to offer what I can to fulfill those responsibilities and expectations.
I'm a nerd, so I like this stuff. I love learning about education and how it works in our community, and just the fascinating history of education in Indianapolis especially. So ILEA, great example. I went to 9 of the 10 meetings, I spoke at 5. I've been involved in fellowships, I've been an ex officio officer with the school that I work with, just providing help with development. And I love showing up for kids. Like when there's events at school, I go because it's fun. Like, let's go watch kids in a bounce house having a good time. Let's go watch the basketball team play. So I really like showing up. And I think it's important, especially at the leadership levels, being visible, being accessible, and also being relatable. Making sure that people can come up to you, tell you what's on their mind, and seek your leadership and guidance, your counsel, or at least a listening ear, right? So I'm on board. I am ready to for the time investment. I'm ready to add value where I can, but mostly, and especially in the beginning, is actively listening and figuring out more about how I can plug in and add value. Definitely seeking first to understand, then to be understood. I have a lot to learn, and I think any new board member has a lot to learn when they're new. So yes, I'm willing to put in the time. That sounds like a really rewarding experience.
Thank you both for those responses. We always say this is conversational. I say always, even though it's been once, but it's starting to feel like a lot. But anyway, we say it's conversational, and I just want to reiterate that if we have a few questions to ask, but 5 is probably one of the biggest ones about the time investment, and at least 3 meetings a month. Please just exponentially increase that in your mind to lots of time. That's what I'll say. And I'll move into what I think is my next question to ask, which I think is also extremely important. As we talk about governance and we talk about the issues that are surrounding public education and what IPS has to face, at the end of the day, our work is done in concert with other professionals, with other people who have committed their time and talent to this work in overabundance. So the next question is just as important in my mind. Please give an example of a time that you had a disagreement with a colleague. What did you do in response, and ultimately how the disagreement was resolved or managed for the future? This is not easy work, and we don't always agree with one another. And so it is important to know how you manage those things. So I'll read the question one more time. And I don't remember who went first last. It is conversational, isn't it? Just got lost in the sauce, I don't even know. I'll start with you, Chris, but I'll repeat the question, okay? Please give an example of a time that you had a disagreement with a colleague, what you did in response, and ultimately how the disagreement was resolved or managed for the future.
I'm going to go back to my time on the culture team. Which, by the way, was really rewarding work. I really liked supporting teachers in that capacity. and kids, because I mentioned earlier, behavior is a form of communication, and also there's instances of that with our teaching staff. They have challenges in their life as well, and sometimes that enters the classroom. So you got to be sensitive to that. But there was a young man who kept getting put out of class, and he was a lot to deal with. I'm not going to say he wasn't, but really sitting down. And literally breaking bread with this young man. He was 7. Listening to his story, his challenges, and kind of unpacking that and helping communicate that to the staff at school, and just arming them with a little bit more information with how to approach him with care and some interventions that could work when things are going off track, and also to think about positive rewards. So really taking time to get to know the student, and then also hearing the staff members' concerns as well, and where this individual is coming from, and also some challenges going on in the individual's life. We were able to create a better student experience and a better instructor experience in that classroom, and it really just was open lines of communication and pushing through the initial disagreement, because this staff member was pretty upset with this kid frequently. And that's to be understood, but it's good to slow down and actively listen to each other and find great solutions for all parties.
Because we're in this context, my mind went back to my classroom teaching experiences. And there's one staff meeting in particular that I remember very well. It was our first grade team gathered together, and the meeting grew very contentious because we were looking at some testing data, a test that I think is pretty similar to what NWEA is now, and we had significant disagreements about how that data should be interpreted. And we were using it to make decisions about student placements and student instruction, and we were just not on the same page about how to move forward. And because all of that data is not just numbers, it represents students, kids in our classrooms who we care deeply about. And also for teachers, it also says something about like you as a professional, right? Like how your kids are performing on these sorts of things. And so the conversation grew heated. It did require a pause, a stepping away. Ultimately, it required that our team came back together and offered apologies to one another and repair. We all had to admit where we were wrong, where we were too emotional, where we were too easily offended. And then we all had to go back and do a little bit of learning, like return to the testing training materials and figure out like what is this data actually showing us so that we could make decisions that we didn't all necessarily 100% across the board feel were perfect, but that we felt good about, that we felt were the right things for the students in our care. I think that some disagreement and conflict is healthy and necessary. If this board agreed 100% of the time on policies and decisions, then probably the board would not actually represent the very diverse people of Indianapolis very well. But I am committed to always approaching disagreements with kindness and respect and curiosity. So I expect disagreements to arise from time to time, but I'm also committed to showing up and working through those disagreements till we come to a point where we all can feel good about moving forward.
Ms. Cornell, sorry for this. Our district has a very diverse student body, and the student body doesn't necessarily reflect what students look like across the state. And sometimes our state legislature and or federal guidance come around that we have to question how they conflict or how they align with board values. So how would you approach decision making as a board member when issues arise that involve both legal considerations and the need to create a safe, inclusive environment for all students?
I'm very grateful for this question. what came to mind when I heard the phrase legal considerations and what your comments, Commissioner Terry, sort of alluded to is immigration and the recent challenges that IPS faced from our state government. I will say that I was in alignment with how the board approached those issues. I am not a lawyer, but I know that IPS has a legal team committed to following the law and keeping IPS in compliance. My understanding also is that Ms. James is also a lawyer, and that part of her role as the administrator is making sure that the board is in compliance with whatever legal restraints or limits or constrictions might be. I know that IPS does its due diligence to follow all of the various laws that are in place. As a parent, again, recently it's a different situation, but we had a bomb threat at our school this past spring. And that's a very scary moment for any parent. It was a very scary day in our house and in our neighborhood. When students are in our building, we have a responsibility to the very best of our ability to assure their families and caregivers that they are safe and that they are cared for. That's not only physical safety, but emotional safety as well, right? There's so much data to suggest that students who don't feel emotionally safe cannot learn to the best of their ability. And so I think that the board has a responsibility to balance those legal considerations with the task to care well for every student who walks through the doors. I think it was Miss Roselle who at Monday's meeting made the comment that has stuck with me that IPS doesn't get to choose who we educate, but nor would we want to. I think the diversity in our school buildings is a gift, and yeah, I trust IPS's legal department, I think, to navigate this sort of thing well, and I appreciate the way that that has been done as far as I have seen so far.
Yeah, piggybacking a little bit on Ms. Cornett, what a pleasure and privilege it is to advocate for students of diverse backgrounds at our North Keystone campus for the schools I work with. There is a flag on the drop ceiling of every nation represented, and it's incredible to see. I think they ran out of room, but last I counted was 27, and that's a gift. One young man from Afghanistan had never even been to school when he arrived as a refugee, period. So as an 11-year-old boy, there was a lot to unpack there, right? And meeting him where he's at and helping him along. So this is a question about legal status, sorry, but that got me thinking. I appreciate you bringing up the whole immigration thing, and that I really admire the courage of IPS with that. Safe and inclusive environment. So in MTSS, you have tier 1 instruction, right? And every student deserves high quality tier 1 instruction. And it's often the case that students will need tier 2 supports and interventions. And of course, folks that need the most support will be tier 3 at the tip of the pyramid. That's a useful example. There's a lot of legal components of 504 plans, IEPs, etc., that really have to get looked at very carefully. So making sure that we're providing the best tier 3 supports that we can to the folks that need it, and helping families understand what those things are is really critical. And then other legal considerations, I'm encouraged to know that staff is on retainer and employed that understand the law, but inclusive, making sure those students feel comfortable in their tier 1 classroom with push and pull out services, whatever it is for them in their unique journey. So there's a lot of legal considerations there. Alluded to enrollment practices, being sure that we're compliant with Enroll Indy, and all of the things that go with being non-selective, accepting every student, meeting them where they're at in their journey, and being inclusive in that way is really important as well. So kind of from the very first, even before day one for a student, there's legal considerations to really consider there. So those are some things that come to mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carey. That leads into my question. Sometimes our a safe and inclusive environment is sometimes outside of school. And if a parent asked you, what does a safe bus stop look like, for instance? How would you answer from the perspective of a school board commissioner? And what info would you expect the admin team to provide so the board can fulfill its oversight responsibility?
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to start with,
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, my contacts are so hard
No,
because
that's
the heat outside. But I'm going to start with Lindsay.
Yeah, I appreciate this question. Safe routes to school are really important. We have primarily been a family of walkers because, again, we live right across the street from School 39. And I will tell you that even on that very, very short walk to school, it takes less than 2 minutes, and it feels perilous. And we have had close calls with school buses and with drivers not paying attention. And so I deeply, deeply understand the need for safe routes to school, including bus stops. So many factors in what makes a bus stop safe, right? The safety of the neighborhood or the location where the stop is located is one thing. We need streetlights, we need sidewalks where kids can stand. Of course, the proximity to the student's home matters. Are they trekking across town just to get to their bus stop? And also, is this bus stop off of a major road or a thoroughfare, right? Or is it a quiet neighborhood street, right? All of these sorts of factors affect how safe a bus stop is. And so I think that the safety of bus stops requires a lot of collaboration with other entities in our city, right? The school board doesn't control streetlights and sidewalks or stop signs and crosswalks, right? And so collaboration with DPW or with nonprofits. I'm blanking on the name, but we have the Project Zero team, right, that's working on pedestrian safety, right? There are entities in our city who are working on this sort of thing, and so I think collaborating with them is important as well. And then again, not to sound like a broken record, but I think keeping IPEC accountable to what they have promised, because ILEA has given IPEC purview over transportation. I think that Mr. O'Connor in Monday's meeting said that in year 2 of the referendum, IPEC would roll out their transportation operations. And so I think that that will be an important part of it, is ensuring that IPEC is factoring in all of these complicating elements, from the location of bus stops to the infrastructure around them to bus drivers who themselves are safe people for our children, right, and reliable. So it's not a simple question, though it seems like it at first, but one that, I agree, is extremely important, especially in our school choice landscape.
I want to give a shout out. During the ILEA proceedings, is her name Deetra Taylor? I was trying to look it up. Man, what a talent. She really did such a great job of outlining the amazing job that IPS does with their transportation, and what a challenge it is to provide great transportation to families and students in a safe and efficient way. And I also share this with you, Ms. Cornett, IPEC really has a responsibility to keep that level of service and of course make it better. That's kind of the point. But I just wanted to highlight her because she's a talent. I love that, Ms. Cornett, you mentioned Vision Zero, because data should drive decisions and next steps. And there's just a wealth of ton of great info out there. Where are wrecks most likely? I've seen really great instances of tactical urbanism implemented, for example, like at 16th and Monon. And then some places in Fountain Square as well. So there's some things that can be done at the tactical level. But really holistically with transportation, we got to make sure that families are in communication. They know where their kids are, they know what to expect, they understand that the kids are safe. Hopefully, at our bus stops, someone goes out and actually looks where it is. Is it safe? How do you feel? Where do cars park? Especially for satellite stops, right? Because not all of our kids are door to door. Of course, the McKinney-Vento kids are, but in other circumstances. But we really need boots on the ground to assess the safety of a bus stop. Local businesses being okay with the bus stop, I think, is important, and also getting them to collaborate and be on board with that foot traffic and different things that come along with waiting for buses. Also, snow removal. We often overlook this, but weather considerations, especially snow, is a massive challenge. For example, if you go up Emerson or Arlington, there's some really difficult places to cross the street when there's 6 or 9 inches of snow, for example. So those are important things. And then other things that a bus stop would need: lighting. Thank you for bringing that up. And that would get us a long way. But I just wanted to lift up that shout out. Oh, one last thing. Andy Siebert, Together Ed, the transportation pilot that's getting ready to launch. Hopefully there's a lot of great data developed from that. I've had some good conversations with him and their team. So I look with optimism to that. But again, that all comes back to IPEC. Taking on that responsibility also comes with the really serious responsibility to roll it out in a great way.
Thank you both for your thoughtful answers. This next question, we've been talking about diversity a lot this evening. It's in that same vein, and how have you engaged the diverse District 4 community that you both live in to understand the needs of the language needs of the schools and the overall community when it comes to the issues of existing conditions and education? Can you give us an example of how you have engaged the community you would represent? And let's start with Nancy.
The first thing I would say about this is just to reiterate what we've already talked about, which is that I believe that the diversity of IPS's student body is a gift. It is not merely like a challenge to work around or a burden on the school system. It is a gift that we are tasked with appreciating and stewarding well. So that's the first thing I want to say about that. The primary way that I have engaged the diversity of District 4 is through my children's school. This was one of our deciding factors in why we wanted our kids to attend their neighborhood schools, is because we wanted our children to grow up surrounded by a diversity of peers. And School 39 is really wonderful in that it really does reflect the diversity of the neighborhood and of the areas that are around School 39. And that's been a gift. I know that when I show up there, I am going to encounter families that look different than mine in terms of race and ethnicity, in terms of language, in every way. And I said earlier, my oldest is at Harshman Middle School, which is of course a dual language program. And so there is a significant number of Spanish-speaking families there. And in our FSTA meetings there, we have had conversations about how do we make these meetings more accessible for the Spanish-speaking families. I was really pleased to see that the IPS website has been updated and there is a translate button right at the top, I noticed just this week, which is really wonderful. When we talk about IPEC, I think the accessibility of it to non-native English speakers is a question. You know, was Mr. O'Connor's presentation yesterday available in languages other than English? Do families know how to request or access translation of these types of meetings? I think that's a really important question. And recognizing that families for whom English is not a first language face really significant barriers to engaging the education system well. When we were first navigating enrollment, I found it confusing. And I am a college-educated native English speaker with an education background, and I had trouble navigating the system. And so I can only imagine how daunting the task feels to families who don't have those those privileges and benefits that I've approached it with. And so as a member of the board, if I'm chosen for the appointment, like, it would be deeply important to me that decisions are being made with those families in mind, not necessarily a family that looks like mine, right? We need to be making these decisions with our most vulnerable students in mind. And I will readily admit that in serving the constituents of District 4 well, and in as I plan to do, pursuing the seat in the November election, that this is a challenge for me as a white woman, right? It will take significant effort on my part to be someone who is welcoming in a safe space for the diversity of people in my district. But that is work that feels like an honor to get to do, and it's work that I'm committed to putting the effort in toward.
Yeah, and thank you, Ms. Cornett, for just acknowledging, also as a white person, there's, and a native English speaker, this is a challenge. So I've been doing a lot of canvassing, not in District 4, but as I do canvassing, and by the way, it's to support public education, I get to meet a lot of people who don't speak English, but I take down a little note, and I have either a Haitian Creole speaker at one of the schools I work with, or a Spanish speaker reach out to them, and connecting folks with resources and meeting them where they are is where it all comes down to. And also being out in the community and getting the opportunity to meet folks, again, that visibility, that connection, and showing up. Really allows you to have those interactions that maybe wouldn't come naturally in your day. You got to go out there and get those interactions at many times. So as far as it goes with connecting families with language resources, our English language learner departments have this wealth of knowledge, right? They're already working with kids on their reading score, with their Tier 2 instruction, with their push-in, pull-out supports. There's a lot of great ways to get families connected with staff at schools and to utilize them to just build relationships and check in with people. And, oh, hey, there's an initiative. Can we run a call list? Probably, right? That's not too tough. So those are important ways to do that. And then also marketing materials. This can't be overemphasized, especially for prospective families. They have to be in different languages. And shout out to the translate button. I think that's a great starting point. But for example, even print collateral that you're handing out in the community is really important. And then also tapping into those leaders in the community. For example, we work closely with someone with a Facebook group of 36,000 followers in Haitian Creole. And thank you, Daphne, for that work, because you're really able to get that message out in the native tongue of the folks that you want to connect with. So communication, meeting people where they are, and including your team that probably already has those skill sets, it will get us a long way down the road.
Thank you both for your questions, your answers. So, as we prepare to wrap up our questions, we cannot leave without discussing the elephant in the room. Given the current mandate to serve all students within the IPS boundary across all public school types, both district managed and charter schools, how would you approach working collaboratively with leaders and operators whose models or philosophies you might not fully agree with, while still moving outcomes forward for the students we serve? That's our question.
In this really diverse and complex educational landscape that is Indianapolis, you're going to have to work with folks you don't fully agree with. And that's okay. Ms. Cornett, shout out to you for earlier. Disagreement is okay. Actually, it's productive. So I think that's important to keep in mind. The main thing to focus on is, are those folks that you don't fully disagree with, is their main focus creating positive student outcomes? If so, proceed. If not, look with caution. And I think that in our landscape, you can think of the organizations that advocate for kids. It really is. We just disagree on how to go about it. And that's actually a piece of expertise that I bring to the potential board appointment, is that I am kind of other. I work in a public school system that's a little different. We still keep kids the main thing, and good things happen. We just do it in a little different way. It's very STEM focused. We build rockets and robots. We nerd out. It's really cool. We really focus on the student experience, high quality instruction, and positive student learning outcomes. So as IPS operating in the boundary, thinking of ways and partners that can move the needle on student achievement, thinking of partners that will lift up your community and help embolden them to reach out to their schools or feel welcomed at their schools, those advocacy organizations, to help them show up at the State House to advocate. Those are really important partners. And as we work as leaders, I think IPEC's actually going to help us do that quite a bit, because at that table, there's folks that you probably don't fully align with. And that's okay, as long as student outcomes are the main thing. That being said, I really do wish that referendum was a little higher. The downside of that, or the upside of that, is perhaps it's more agreeable in November. But that's a tough one. So agree. It's okay to disagree. If students are the main thing, move forward. That's what I would say.
Growing up in Florida and getting my teaching certification in Florida, and then my oldest completed his kindergarten year in Michigan, and then we moved here to Indy. So I have had the opportunity to sort of see the education landscape and these negotiations between charter schools and traditional public schools and private schools and vouchers play out in a variety of contexts. And I am not the kind of person to argue that a particular type of school should not exist. I think that humans are diverse with a diversity of needs, and so we need a diverse educational options are important. I have had amazing experiences in traditional district-run public schools, and I love these schools and I'm passionate about their long-term success and stability in our district. At the same time, currently I work for the Englewood Community Development Corporation, not on the community development side of things, but Englewood, as you know, is really closely involved with Paramount Englewood, Purdue Polytechnic High School, and Thomas Gregg Neighborhood School. So I have not had personal or professional involvement with those schools, but what I have had is a front row seat to how much those schools matter to the residents of the Englewood neighborhood. And I have watched ECDC employees and residents there pour significant time and energy and resources into those schools. I think that particularly in a neighborhood like Englewood, when there's not another educational option, sometimes a school model like a charter school might have its place. I do think, however, that new and interesting ideas, while valuable, are not enough to justify the diversion of very limited resources away from the schools that already exist in our community, whether they are traditional or charter. We've got to ensure the success of the schools that we already have first. I think that's really, really important. I hope that we would make data-driven decisions based on student outcomes. I think we might have to ask ourselves sometimes, like, what data do we not have that we need? And always making sure that we are making the decisions that lead to the most significant and hoped for student outcomes, to Chris's point as well. We can't make decisions based on what's best for the adults in the room. We can't make decisions based on what's best for the real estate interests or the school authorizers. We have got to make our decisions based on what is contributing most to student outcomes. That can happen in a variety of education settings, absolutely, but we've just got to make sure that along the way we're keeping students first. And as I alluded to earlier, any disagreement, I'm doing my best to show up with kindness, respect, curiosity. I intend to bring that same attitude to the board, regardless of what disagreements might occur.
I take a deep breath, so you can do that too. Moving on to the next part. Thank you all for your answers and responses. Moving on to public comment. I will remind our speakers that you are allowed 3 minutes to offer comments to the board. To ensure fairness and allow all voices to be heard, we ask that you adhere strictly to the 3-minute time limit. A timer will begin when you start speaking. When the timer sounds, please conclude your remarks promptly to allow the next speaker their opportunity to speak. Failure to do so may result in your microphone being muted. Comments should be directed to the board collective and must remain respectful, civil, and appropriate. The board chair may abruptly end comments of anyone that is abusive or deemed to be disruptive to the orderly process of the meeting. Any individual engaging in disruptive behavior may receive a warning. Continued disruptions may result in removal from the meeting in accordance with board policy and state law. Comments should not address a topic that might be of confidential nature or that will compromise the board's impartiality or violate legal guidelines. While the board values and appreciates public input, we will not engage in dialogue, answer questions, or respond to comments at this time. Please state your name for the record when you provide your public comment.
Good evening, my name is Alyssa Empink. I served as the District 4 representative on the IPS Board of Commissioners, and I'm here tonight because our community deserves to have their seat filled with the care and commitment that this seat demands. Just yesterday, I was at the Urban League's Equal Opportunity Luncheon, listening to Stacey Abrams speak about why local government matters most. I looked around the room and saw some of my fellow commissioners there as well. We were all present because we understand that this is where democracy is felt most directly. In our schools, on our streets, in the decisions that shape daily life for the people who elected us. Stacey said it plainly that democracy is a fancy term for shared power. And the point of that power is making life better. And she reminded us that people lose hope when democracy doesn't work. And they think it doesn't work when their needs aren't met. And so one of our responsibilities is to prove that democracy can deliver. Tonight, this board has that opportunity. The voters of our districts did not elect this board to step back in moments like this one. They elected you to lead. And leadership means that making decisions that honor the people who stand here. This evening, you will deliberate, and tomorrow you will vote. And that is democracy working exactly as it should. Not in spite of the fact that the voters aren't casting ballots this evening or tomorrow, but because they already did. They cast them when they elected each of you. And this appointment is an extension of that trust. During my time representing the district, I held community convenings across District 4 and listened. Our neighbors were clear and consistent about what they need from their school board representative. They want someone with real proximity, not just someone who lives nearby, but someone who is genuinely woven in the life of this community. Someone whose children are in these schools, someone who feels the weight of every board decision not as policy, but as a neighbor. Someone who shows up before there is a crisis, not only when there is one. That is the standard our community set, and that is the standard that I am asking this board to carry into executive session tonight and into that vote tomorrow. I had the privilege of watching Lindsay do exactly that from one of the most important seats as PTSA leader at School 39 and in our neighborhood communities in the southeast side of Indianapolis. Lindsay and I met in service together doing the unglamorous but necessary work, showing up, advocating for resources, building the kind of trust that only comes from being consistently present over time. The seat is vacant. our community's needs or not. And I am asking this board to fill this vacancy with someone who will honor what our neighbors deserve. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Lauren Palmer. I am an IPS parent of 2 and a District 3 resident. I have one child at IPS Butler Lab 55 and another entering Rockwood Middle School this fall. I'm a huge supporter of public education. I have lived in Indy for almost my entire life and in my Broadwood community for almost 15 years. And first moving into that neighborhood, I definitely had the reputation of, well, once you have kids, you either move to the suburbs or you send them to private school. And during the past 15 years that we lived there, we have watched it transform into a flourishing public school neighborhood where students are receiving a great education and our community is so much stronger for it. Public school is the foundation of our communities. Our schools connect citizens together and they reinforce our democracy. Lindsay is already an incredibly impactful member of her District 4 community and school communities. And who better to represent District 4 than a parent who has shown up for her school and for IPS at every turn and is already earning the trust of her community. All of that would be true even if Lindsay was just an average IPS constituent, but she is not. I've had the pleasure of knowing Lindsay for nearly 7 years as a friend, a fellow writer, a fellow IPS mom, and fellow nonprofit professional. Lindsay is deeply committed, smart, and determined. She is someone deserving of the public's trust, with both the humility and the backbone needed to do the work. And more than that, Lindsay brings a deep sense of curiosity and drive to do good in the world. She is committed to justice and to finding real solutions, and I know she will fight for every student. Lindsay is the rare leader who brings out the best in every single person she works with. She makes every room better, and I have no doubt she will be an incredibly committed public servant. She is also an incredibly compelling thinker, speaker, and writer, and I believe she will be a deeply influential voice for advocacy and justice within and beyond IPS. Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Let's call. All right, it's closing.
I just want to thank everyone who took the time to not only provide public comment, but to just show up here this evening and watch the process. I'd like to say, as I said earlier, that I have a lot of respect for anyone and compassion, frankly, for anyone who sticks their neck out and decides to attempt to serve in this way. I'd like to also say that in this, where we are in our community and in this current landscape, you all have mentioned IPEG several times, so many things that we're working on and dealing with. I would encourage, no matter the outcome, again, there's one seat. And the best thing we can do is, if we're committed to public education, if we're committed to IPS, to continue to be that no matter what happens, and continue to look at other people across the table. If you think that they're stepping up to do work, then maybe you'll have to cross their path again, and you may have to work together. So always consider that. We don't have 2 seats, we have 1. And so I thank you for your time tonight. I thank you for everyone who came out to provide comment. And as a reminder of our next steps, the board will conduct a formal vote on the appointment Thursday, June 25th, which is tomorrow. While the selected individual will be invited to attend our upcoming sessions, they will officially begin their term as a voting member following the administration of the IPS oath of office. This concludes our public interview session. This special called meeting stands adjourned.